Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the show. Today is another driver's edition. It's just going to be Sean and I. We're sitting down. We're talking about the RV industry, but we got some things that we want to catch up with you guys with what we're up to. And one of those things are actually news related, and that was the Overland West show. I just returned from the West show where I worked the Winnebago booth, and Winnebago released their brand new adventure truck. It's a new segment for Winnebago. It's called the ARCA. ARKA. And we're going to have somebody from Winnebago actually come on the show later on and talk about what that took to actually get to the market from idea to testing, marketing. We're going to dive into the ARCA. But I just wanted to say that, of course, at the Overland show, it did draw a lot of attention. This was the first outing for the ARCA. This was the first time that just the normal, regular public could see the vehicle in person. And that was a nice draw for Winnebago to have over at the booth. They even did like a happy hour, Sean, on Friday night, where they did a happy hour for media to come out, and we were able to chit chat with media, and we were being quoted for our experience with the vehicle and stuff like that. So that was a lot of fun. And the show is always a lot of fun. The crowd this year was good. It was 28,000 people. That's pretty good for an Overland show. Overland West is their biggest show. They're the same numbers being reported for this year as last year. I was wondering if it would grow or what it would do. But you know what, Sean? They did start that new show that's located in Southern California now. So now they have 5 shows across the country. I feel like every time they open up a new show, it's going to draw from the Overland West show. Colorado's not that far from Flagstaff, and that's a show. And now Southern California isn't that far from Flagstaff either. So I think both those shows draw energy out of that West.
Yeah, that going back to the ARCA, it's a unique vehicle for Winnebago,
Hmm.
like something they've never done before. So it's pretty interesting that conversation we have with the Winnebago employee that talks about it, all the thought that went into that vehicle. So I really hope everybody gets a chance to listen to it because it is super unique for Winnebago to develop something like this.
Comes from a lot of, as you listen to the show, it comes from a lot of customer feedback. They started with the Revel, then progressed to the Echo, which was a little bit of a larger vehicle. And now they have like a full blown adventure truck, which is the Arca.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna actually miss the Overland East this year, but maybe they'll have another one on the East Coast at some point too. I'm not sure. It's not as big on the East Coast as it is out west, but I am seeing more and more Overland vehicles in my area.
Yeah, I'm missing East this year as well. We have a wedding that we're going to. I would imagine, Sean, that if you're making it to the Hershey show, I don't know for sure. Winnebago hasn't released this officially, but I would imagine, even though it's not really a typical RV, I think they'll show it at the Hershey show just to get more eyes on it. I know it's not really for that market, but I think it would be wise for them to bring at a show like that too. Why not?
There is a lot of media covering it, so it's interesting to read that as well.
Yeah, and it's got some cool amenity stuff that I think people will be in, those heated floors and things like that. But we'll get into that more with the actual ARCA episode. I also wanted to bring up, Sean, that trip that you just took. I know it wasn't really RV related, but it's very outdoor enthusiast related, I believe. And anybody that enjoys the outdoors and nature and wildlife, I mean, I think you should talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, the trip was pretty interesting. There actually was quite a few RVers on the trip. So that was, and one of the guides was actually a frequent RVer. So that made it a little more relatable, I guess, to RVing, that a handful of people there were RVers. Even one person to travel to the event brought their teardrop camper with them and parked it in the parking lot of the lodge that we stayed in. But it was a really interesting trip. We went on a group trip and it was through a company called Road Scholar, who was kind of like the fantasy RV tours, I guess, of outdoor travel. And we went to the Poconos. We stayed at a old lodge that had a very long history. And actually one of the things that we did, it's besides being outdoors, you also get a lot of educational content because Road Scholars was initially developed for teachers
Hmm.
that were retired but still wanted to stay engaged. So that's how it came about. And so every night or during the days, we would have a lecture or some sort of educational event every day. And one of them was on the history of the lodge where we stayed, and it was over 100 years old
Wow.
and had a lot of good history. In fact, it's kind of where the PGA championship was founded and things like that. But what we did was we were in the Poconos. We hiked like 22 miles of the Appalachian Trail, and it's very rocky in Pennsylvania. So if you're not used to walking on rocks, it's rough on your feet. But they have three different groups. One is like they call it the Masters group that did a little bit further, a little bit faster every day. They had the Bachelor's group, which did an average amount. We did about I was in the Bachelor's group for the two of the three hiking days, and one was 6.5 miles, one was 7.5 miles, and the Masters were doing like 10 miles.
Mm.
And then they also have an associate, which is like 3 miles and more of a very slow pace, not as hilly, things like that. Besides the hikes, which are guided, you have a guide in the front and a guide in the back. And the group I was in was so big, we also had a guide in the middle.
Oh, wow.
And they would explain things to you about the trail and give you some history about the trail and point out plants and animals that you see. And then we also had on one of the days, instead of hiking, we did a 2 mile nature walk with a naturalist, and he was pointing out all kinds of stuff. It was more stuff than I'd ever learned about nature, crammed into like 3 hours of time. But he could tell like bird calls faster than the Merlin app, and he could identify plants faster than Seek. It was very, very interesting. And then we also had a class on rescued wildlife. They brought a couple of owls in, a couple of different other birds, a skunk, an opossum, and a turtle. And they talked about how they get hurt in the wildlife and what you should do to save them and kind of give you a little bit about the animals as well. So that was pretty interesting. It was, I think, 5 days total. It was a lot of fun, a lot of fun. And like I said, there were a lot of RV travelers there, so it's very relatable to RVing. It's all outdoorsy type stuff, but they have a bunch of different trips. But it was worth it. We'll do it again. We'll do another one with them. It was reasonably affordable, and for the education you get, I mean, it pays for it. I think just in education if you're into that kind of thing.
And then similar to fantasy RV tours, Sean, like you pay, you show up, and everything is kind of laid out for you. Is that
Yeah, yeah. So we had, like I said, the guides, and then we had dinner every night, like a group dinner, sort of like fantasy RV tours. Then we had in the morning we had breakfast, which was paid for, was at the lodge, and it was buffet, but they had an omelet station and things like that. And then for lunch in the morning, they would lay out all kinds of food and bread, treats, all that stuff. And you would make your own lunch, pack your lunch for the day's hike, and then you would eat that on the trail.
okay? Yeah, it sounds like a good time. And I think a lot of that relates to RVing too, because, as RVers, we do like to be outdoors and stuff like that. The fact that you're learning about plants and vegetation and the, the bird calls and things like that, I think that's stuff that you can actually apply to an RV trip as well.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. It was very interesting.
And you said that they have them across the country, Sean, or is it an East Coast thing only?
Across the world.
Oh, across the world even. Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Tons and tons of trips. Yep.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, very cool. So that's kind of what Sean and I are up to. We do have Overland PNW coming up next. That's in Bend, Oregon at the end of June. I will be at that show. Again, we will, I'm not sure if I'm supposed to say this or not, but we will have the ARCA there. I never know what I'm allowed to say or not. The ARCA will be there. So if you're going to be at that show and you want to see in person, come see me out there and I'll give you a tour of the ARCA. And this is really the time of year I feel like RVing is pretty much in full swing now. I feel like everybody is in their spring weather. This is like the kickoff of the RV season. We are in full swing right now. And we wanted to talk a little bit about what we're seeing in the, not just the industry, but we want to talk a little bit about what we're seeing out in the real world as well. And, the sales, I think they're still slowing down. I know from working the shows, Sean, people come up to us, they have a lot of questions, but nobody's really willing to say, okay, let me sign on a dotted line. But often, if they're talking to me, I'm usually when I'm with Winnebago, I'm just part of the helping out with the marketing team, and I'll tell the person, look, I'm just here to answer questions. I can't sell you this vehicle. That's not why I'm here. I'm just here for information. But if you would like to talk to a salesperson, I can definitely bring them over. And recently it's been, no, I'm comfortable just talking with you. And I would say a few years ago, 4 years ago, everybody was like, yeah, let me talk to the salesperson too. Everybody wanted to talk to a salesperson and actually sit down and run numbers. And I feel like that's not the case at the moment. And I'm curious to see how that progresses to, say, a Hershey show, which is really a set up to be a selling show. But
Well, Julie and I are looking at smaller Class Cs to
Mhm.
get, but right now I would not buy for two reasons. One is that I just filled up my truck before we recorded this, and even with my discount, I was paying $5.26 a gallon for diesel.
Mhm.
So it was like over $150 to fill it up. And I couldn't imagine having a big fuel tank diesel. It's, I mean, you got to take out a loan just to fill it up.
Yeah. I mean, for PNW, I usually drive to it. I usually drive my Vista there and I camp on site. But this year I'm flying Winnebago, after crunching numbers, they're like, yeah, it's cheaper to fly you and get a hotel and a rental car than to have you drive your Vista out to the show. Now, if it was both Sabrina and I going, then the Vista would be cheaper. But since it's just me on my own, then it's cheaper to fly.
And the other thing I think is holding people back right now is the interest rates are super high. I looked it up earlier today, and I think Lending Tree said they average about 7.5% for new RVs and about 7.75% for used. Bank rate, which I think is all online, is 6.2 to 6.5. Good Sam for high credit scores is 6.5 to 8.5, and high risk borrowers 10 to 15%. So I think the average for if you have a 760 plus credit score, you're still going to pay between 6 and 7.5%. And if you're below a 660 credit score, you're going to be paying 13 to 18%, which over 15 to 20 years, which is the average loan, that's that's a lot of money. A lot of money you're adding to the cost.
And that's even like you said, Sean, even with good credit. It's not even like
Yeah.
somebody with poor credit is
Mhm.
really going to struggle when it comes down to those payments and the interest rates.
Yeah. And I think the RVs are probably priced reasonably, but when you talk about adding the interest on top of that, that's a pretty big hit for something that goes down, 20 to 25% in the first couple years.
Yeah, and the manufacturers, the dealers, they're all aware of what's going on right now. Winnebago is even offering $7,500 cash back on new purchases. Well, they don't call it cash back; they call it customer cash. You can also do 90 days of no payments and no interest. And they're also offering, I'm not really sure how this works, but up to 240 months, Winnebago's doing an offer where you can get financing for 4.9%. I'm not really sure. I don't know how that works though, Sean. Like, are you finance? You can't finance, I don't think, directly through Winnebago. Up here it is down here. So the financing goes through a company called Winnebago Aqua Finance Program. I don't even think I've ever heard of that before. But I do believe that's just till the end of this month, and then it expires. Maybe they're thinking that summer sales are going to pick up or something like that. But we'll have to keep an eye on it and see what happens. I know nowadays working the shows with these dealers and talking to the dealers that, for a little while, Sean, MSRP was what the selling price was for a little bit of the vehicles, and now it is back to being very negotiable. Before they were charging over MSRP. Same thing with the automotive industry. For a little while there, people were overpaying on the MSRPs of cars, but that's all returned now to like, let's haggle. I hate haggling, Sean, but everything's back to the haggle. I don't want to pay MSRP though either. So
I noticed though, one thing that's kind of a positive is that my insurance on my RV hasn't really changed very much in the 5 years that we've owned it. It still seems very reasonable to insure it, but yeah, the interest rate and the fuel costs I think are a killer right now.
I agree with you. Our insurance hasn't gone up on our Vista either, and I guess it's not because it's getting older and depreciating. I don't think that our insurance companies really care about that too much. Yeah, but you're right. The insurance hasn't been too bad on our vehicle lately. Any of our vehicles, really. And then the RBIA is showing that it is slower production, dealer inventory. Things are sitting on a dealer lot longer than they used to. And again, I think we've mentioned this in a couple other drivers editions. That all means that you guys listening, if you are shopping, you do have negotiating power. And of course, the more money you can put down, the better you're going to be because of those interest rates. I mean, if you can pay cash for the whole thing, I mean, that's even better. Maybe you could do a trade in plus cash and, walk away with almost no interest at all, which would be, ideal.
Yeah, I wonder what they are giving on trade-ins now. Is it like it was pre-COVID, or is it harder to trade in? I'm not sure.
I would probably say it's pre-COVID. I know working with the dealers, they all are quick to mention it. They always ask early on in the conversation, do you have a vehicle to trade in? We take trade ins. If they don't, the consumer is usually saying, hey, because they always ask. I ask too because I'm interested, but I think the dealers always ask because they want to know value. But when I'm giving somebody a tour, I always say, oh, what are you in now? Do you camp now? Because I'm always curious, like, is this their first RV or have they been RVing for a little bit? Is this, or if they in rooftop tents? So I know it's a pretty early on discussion with the dealers, though. What are they in now? Do they want to trade it in? And let's sit down and do some numbers. So I think trade in still a pretty popular option, and I think dealers are still looking for those trade ins.
Yeah, I guess the other thing I think of is right now, probably the smaller the vehicle you get, the better off you're going to be in the near term because of the fuel and the
hmm
interest rates. But that's not always the case, and it won't be forever. So it makes it hard to make a decision on what to get right now.
Yeah, you know what else I'm hearing, Sean, too, about the smaller vehicles, and I'm not really sure if this pertains or not. A lot of people have HOAs, and a lot of people are looking for smaller vehicles that they can like. Not on. Maybe I shouldn't use the word sneak, but to have on their property in their driveway that fits in their driveway because it can't be out on the street. I feel like a lot of people are coming up to me recently, more than I remember anyway, and saying, "Hey, I'm looking for," they'll look even at a Rebel that's clearly an RV because it got the AC on the roof, but they're like, "Yeah, I might be able to get away with this because it fits in my driveway. It's only 19 feet long, and then my HOA will approve it, and I don't have to put it on storage over a weekend or through the week and just take it out on weekends type of thing." So I think that might be a little bit of why people are going to a smaller size too. Not a big chunk of it, but it's definitely something that I'm hearing more and more of. And I guess that makes sense because I feel like there's more and more HOAs than ever before too.
Yeah, and they're getting more and more picky.
More strict. Yeah, more
Yeah.
strict. So I think that'll kind of play into a part of smaller vehicles as well.
I guess we can talk about, Kenny, now, like I mentioned, the smaller vehicles. I think this is where some of the popularity of some of the overlanding vehicles come in, is because they do have that off-grid capability. So they're generally a little bit smaller than, say, your Class A or my fifth wheel. And they also have all the new technology available to them, I feel like, unless you're doing like a rooftop tent. But like in that Arca, which is an off-road vehicle, or in the Revel, or any off or Storyteller, any of those, it seems like they all have solar. You can get lithium options with them. Now with Starlink, you can have internet anywhere you go. They're pretty advantageous right now.
Yeah, and you know what's funny too, Sean? Well, maybe not funny, but nowadays at the shows, everybody asks me about solar and battery capacity and lithium. Whereas I want to say it was only maybe 3 years ago where if I would tell somebody that it had lithium batteries, one, they either didn't really know what I meant by that, or two, they just didn't care. But now, I mean, I don't think there's one person that I give a tour to an RV where they don't ask about the battery capacity. And for sure, that wasn't the case 3 years ago. Surely it wasn't the case when I got into RVing at 9 years ago now. Nobody really cared at that time, I feel like, or very little people cared. But now everybody's well read on lithium, the benefits of lithium, solar, secondary or third alternators. People are very interested in that. That one's still new to people, though. A lot of people, when I talk about the alternator being able to charge the house batteries with a secondary alternator or something that is like tuned just for the house batteries, that one's still throwing them for a loop a little bit. Because I'll show somebody an RV, and if it doesn't have a generator or the generator is optional, I always tell them in my opinion anyway, I don't necessarily need the generator because your engine now becomes your generator. And every time you start up and drive, you're recharging the batteries anyway. But people are still kind of leery about letting go of that generator. Solar is better than it used to be. And with that alternator, I don't feel like the generator is as an important component as it used to be.
Yeah, and then I think the other advantage that these overlanding or adventure vehicles have now is that campgrounds are getting more and more difficult to make reservations in unless you're doing it really far ahead, which I feel like my kids' age, they don't make reservations far ahead. Having the ability to stay wherever you want is another plus for those vehicles where you can just either park in a rest area or go out in a national forest or BLM land, and you don't have to worry about making reservations.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I mean, that's everything you just said is so true. The campground, booking campgrounds still, I mean, I don't know why, but it is still so difficult to book a campground. Why it is taking so long compared to like, I did a road trip just in my Jeep. I can't remember where I was going. I can't remember where I was going, but it was so easy to go on like Expedia or just Google Maps and type in, hey, I'm driving to so and so. I want to stay somewhere that's pet friendly. You get all these choices and you book it right online, right there, right then, within minutes, just through your phone. And you still can't do that. Still, the only campground I think that is like the easiest to do that with is KOA. You can book the same day. Just go to the app. You can book it right on. You don't even get on the phone. You just book it right through the app. But everybody else seems really slow behind on this.
Yeah, and it seems like every week I'm reading something online where another community has not approved a new campground. So it's gonna if they're not getting approved and more people are getting out there and RVing, it's gonna be harder to stay in a campground. So you need to have some options for going out and not needing a campground.
Yeah, I know for me, when I'm traveling in my Vista, without having my like Battleborn batteries and the solar and everything, it would be such a pain because I literally just rest areas, Cabela's, Cracker Barrel. Like it's just the easiest. It's easier to do that than try to find a campground and book it while I'm driving. And I totally agree with you about the overland vehicles. They already have that mindset. They're already set up that, they're not staying in campgrounds anyway for a vacation. Their vacation is actually like venturing off to the middle of nowhere. That's their idea of their vacation. So those vehicles are already like set up right from the factory to dry camp and be off grid. You're not really putting a lot of money into the vehicles afterwards. They're ready to go. They have off grid capability built into them. It's funny too. There is a shift, Sean, with the newer RVs being like all app controlled, and I'm curious to see how that plays out. I would really like to see how that plays out at a Hershey show, and I'm not making it to the Hershey show this year, but I feel like more and more RVs are touchscreens, app control, and stuff like that. the younger generation or the young, like the overlanders, they seem to be okay with it. But I wonder if the older folks at like say an RV, more RV dedicated show, like a Hershey show, I wonder if they're not all about it. But I do hear the number one thing is, they're fine with a touch screen, but they want some type of redundancy in there. They want physical buttons and switches too. And I think that's the same thing that's happening in the auto industry right now too. Like for a long time, everybody was pushing screens in the cars. Ford, whether it be an EV or not. Like I feel like this really got pushed with the EVs, but then they started putting it in just like regular cars too. Even Jeep, a Jeep Wrangler's now got a big screen inside of it. Now it seems like even the auto industry is still keeping the screens, but giving you buttons under the screens because they realize that not everybody wants to fumble with a screen. You're driving, trying to bring stuff up, and then find what you're looking for inside a screen that's got to swipe or move till you get to the page that you actually want it on. So I'm curious to see how this connectivity works in the RV industry.
I consider myself a pretty pro tech person, but when I'm in my RV, and I've mentioned this before on the podcast, I don't want all that stuff.
Mhm.
I want it simple. I don't want to have an app on my phone to be able to use the bathroom or whatever. I want it simple. And if I want to put my awning out, I'm happy hitting a button to put my awning out. If I'm want to level, I'm okay with opening the storage bay where the leveling things are and leveling that. I don't need an app for everything.
Yeah, I think I'm somewhere in the middle, Sean, because my thermostat is now app controlled in my RV, and it didn't used to be. I upgraded it so that I can either control it from the thermostat itself, or I can control it from my phone. All my Victron stuff, obviously, I can't control anything. That's all monitoring. I don't consider that to be the same thing. But I know there's something else that's in my RV that I've now made that I can kind of control it from my phone. And it's not my waggle because I can control the waggle though from the phone. I can set alerts and stuff like that.
Don't you have an outlet that you can control from your phone?
Not from my phone, but it is. I
Oh,
did hook it up to switches, and it's on a remote.
okay.
But I can't control it from
That's
my
different.
phone. Yeah, but there are outlets out there that you can control from your phone, and that's not maybe that's my next move, Sean. I kinda forgot about that. Yeah, mine's just on a remote switch, but yeah, being able to control it from my phone would even be better. Yeah, but I do feel like I'm somewhere in between. I like apps, and I like to be able to control probably more stuff with my RV than most people would want to. And I will say, like any of these manufacturers that are like putting the big screen inside and everything gets controlled from that screen, I feel like it has to be able to be done with your phone too. Like I feel like your phone needs that capability. Whatever that screen can do, I think your phone needs to also. Like I'm okay with that being the redundancy that the controls are in my phone. Like that's the backup if something would break on that screen for whatever reason it goes blank or whatever. I still need to be able a secondary way to control everything. Switches are even better though. I'm still, I drive a 2001 Jeep and there's nothing technical about that thing. It's like, I even got a stick shift in there. I still like switches and physical buttons. It's hard to say even why, Sean, but, like if I'm yeah, it's hard to even say why I need the physical buttons still. I guess I'm just maybe older. Maybe if I grew up like my nieces and nephews don't know what it's like not to have a smart computer in the palm of your hand. Like that's what they're growing up with. That's just what they know. And they're 20 something and they don't know a time before cell phones. So,
For me, it's harder. I want to be able to fix it. And
mm, oh yeah.
if it's all app based or computer based,
Mhm.
that takes your ability to fix it off the table.
That's a great point. Yeah. You are not, I'm not anyway. I'm not going into a computer screen and reprogramming something or fixing. Yeah, you're right. There's no switch there to diagnose, to run, trace the wire back. Yeah. Cause it's all in a harness and hubbed together. Yeah, you're right. That's a great point. People at home listening or on the road, do you think that the RVs are too tech heavy nowadays? Would you like to see the RV industry scale back and keep it simpler and more streamlined? Or are you okay with controlling everything from the app. Yeah, so not only are like I feel are the RVs changing themselves, but but there has been a big boom and a big interest in the camping in general. That's definitely affecting our campgrounds. Like not only are the campgrounds more difficult to get into because of reservations and scheduling and just they don't make it easy, but they're also getting more expensive. There's more RV parks that are now calling themselves resorts. And I've mentioned this before. Like, it doesn't seem to be a law or a rule of what you have to call your campground a resort. I still think of resorts as being like the real nice KOAs where they got the pool, the pickleball, the gym, the restaurant, the bar. Like, that's a resort. If you have a campground with a swimming pool, I don't know if that falls into resort. I think you need a little bit more than just that for resort. But that's what's happening. They're slapping the name resort on everything, I feel like, and they're rising or they're raising the prices of everything. And that's gonna push more people into staying at a Love's for the night, staying at Flying J, the casinos, dry camping for a few days. To be honest, for me, it's easier for me to find like a dry camping spot in the middle of the desert than it is for me to book a reservation at a campground. Sometimes I'm using iOverlander or RV Parky. They're both just on my phone, app driven. I stop to let Belle out. I take her for a little walk while I'm walking her. I'm looking ahead of where I'm going to be. Pull up my iOverlander. I find a nice little camp spot that gets still reviews, everything peer reviews. Tells me which networks have the best service. If it's AT&T, Verizon, tells me how many bars. Like I feel like these camp, and I know that's not for everybody, but I feel like I wonder at what point do the campgrounds are like shooting themselves in the foot that they're making it one difficult to book and two expensive to book. I mean,
Yeah.
you and I, Sean, have talked about Loves and that we appreciate Loves moving towards catering RVers more and more. And one of the things that Loves is doing now to do that is that they break off a little section where you can actually have hookups and sewer and water. And it's just meant that you would just be there for a night. I think for the most part, I don't think that's like a destination RV area. Sure, I was gonna stay at one, but it was like $75 for the night, and I was like, "I'm not gonna pay $75 just so I have water and electric." I stayed in their free section, because they saw the free section. I was like, "I don't need water and electric that bad for one night, not for $75. I'm just parking in their parking space out here." Yeah.
Another advantage of being set up for
Oh,
doing
yeah.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you gotta be able to that's true. Not everybody has that advantage and ability. So if I didn't, yeah, I'm stuck paying the $75 at a Love's. I was like, wow, I cannot believe, I can't remember. I might have been somewhere cool like a Moab or near Moab, and maybe that's why it was expensive. But I was really surprised. Sean, I was expecting $35 for the night. It's just a one, I'm just there overnight. I'm just on my way traveling somewhere. It's not a resort. It's a Love's gas station. Like I said, I'm a fan of Love's, but yeah, I got to beat them up a little bit on that. That I just thought it was wildly expensive to stay there for the night for water, electric, and sewer. Yeah.
One thing I found, Kenny, this is just a side tip here that I've been paying attention to recently, is we were traveling. We drove up to this resort in the Poconos. Actually, two things to say about this, but the first one is a tip. And we were in Julie's car and her low tire pressure light came on.
Oh yeah.
And I found that Wawas have free air,
Huh.
which makes me want to stop at a Wawa now, because most places you have to pay
Yeah.
to use air, and Wawa has free air, and it's the nice air pumps that show the pressure on them, and you can dial it up to whatever pressure you want your tire to inflate to,
That's
and
nice.
it'll inflate to that and then stop. So if anybody out there is needs to use air for their tires maybe getting low, or temperature change or something like that, where you have to put air in back into your tires, stop at a Wawa. I've found two now, and they both have free air. We've had to use it twice, so that's a plus. And then going back to the resort thing, I thought it was funny. We were traveling up to this lodge, which is, they call themselves a resort. And with our campground experience, we weren't expecting too much. And then we were reading the reviews and they were saying, these hotel rooms don't even have TVs in them. And so we were like, oh, what are we getting ourselves into? But when we stayed at the lodge, first of all, you don't need a TV in your room because you're so exhausted and there's so much to do at this resort that when you go to your room, you go to sleep. They had a brewery on site. They had a restaurant. They had axe throwing during the day. They had live music. They had tours of their gardens on golf carts. They had, you name it. They had 2 restaurants, I think, there. They had, I mean, just an incredible amount of stuff to do. They had a huge pool with a even 6 feet deep, which is hard to find anywhere, and a 12-person hot tub,
Wow.
all indoors. I mean, that's a resort. Like you said, some places just have a pool, like a 3.5-foot pool,
Yeah, that's what they are
and
nowadays.
call that a resort.
You had me at brewery. I was like, "Oh, that's a
Yeah,
resort. You got a brewery
it
on
was
on site?"
it was good. Yeah, it was good brewery.
That's what we need at RV parks. If RV parks started
Yeah.
had breweries, yeah, you're a resort now. So I did look up Love's because I said $75 and I was like, maybe it wasn't that high. So apparently $70 is the cap on a Love's overnight stay, which is still, I think, very high. But according to an AI overview, it does say that they are $32 to $55 per night. And I was expecting 35 was the price. I would say, okay, yeah, I'll pay 35. But the one I was at must have been 70 and not 75. I still think 70 is pretty expensive for just a quick overnight stay because I'm getting in late and I'm leaving early in the morning. I'm barely
Yeah.
really staying there. I'm not. Yeah, but I do appreciate that they're there. And like Sean had mentioned, not everybody has the ability to stay in a parking lot overnight. They might need that power. They probably don't need the water, but they probably need the power for the night. So yeah. You know what? I'll throw Maverick a shout out in Utah when I was out in Utah. Every Maverick that I stopped at had a free Sani station. Every Maverick
Oh,
allowed
that's
you to,
nice.
yep, would allow you to dump your tanks, fill up on fresh water, and then have a sewer water for flushing out your tanks as well. Free. Every one of them was free in Utah that I went to. That's something I know I have to keep in mind. Unfortunately, my Vista while towing the Jeep was too big for some of them because Mavericks aren't as big as like say a Loves or a Flying J. So if you're listening and you're in a bigger vehicle, that's probably not going to help you out. But if you're in some of these smaller Class Cs and B vans, man, it's perfect. It's super easy
Yeah.
for you. So something to keep in mind there. Sharon and I are big fans of KO. We talk about them all the time, but we also like their reports and stuff that they put out, not just the campgrounds. And they're reporting that 31% of RVers are planning to travel slower and stay out longer, which is surprising to me. I'm not actually surprised by it. I thought people would be shortening their trips because of fuel costs and things like that. The traveling slower, though, will increase your fuel mileage. I think that's always important, though. No matter what the fuel prices are, I think traveling by RV at a slow pace is always the way to go. The KOA is finding out that people are finding there's wellness in unplugging and just relaxing. And I mean, I feel like that's not a big secret. I feel like,
Yeah, in fact, in some countries, I think the doctors prescribe
hmm,
that to
really?
people. Yeah, for wellness is to, I know in Japan they have a term for it, but it's called forest bathing. And they
I've
can
heard that
actually
before.
prescribe that to go out, get away from everything, go out in nature and just sit and relax. So there is actual, I think, scientific publications on the benefits of it. So I agree.
Any scientific fact about getting out and maybe mingling with people as well, Sean, like community wise or socializing at a campground, you think?
I think in the older population, they're doing research on that now, that not just at a campground, but having socialization as part of your life as an older adult is very beneficial to your wellness and overall health.
Yeah, I could see it. Yeah, I would think so. And that's sometimes what draws people to campgrounds and RV, and that's sometimes what draws people away from the campgrounds. Like, still enjoy RVing because they go out to the middle of nowhere and camp.
Yeah.
I guess that's more falls down into your type of personality. Are you extroverted or introverted, and how much socializing do you really want to have on, say, vacation? You might be just trying to unwind, unplug, relax, and not feel like you need to be on and socializing with somebody, your neighbors.
So I think we already talked about some of the highlights of what's new or continuing in the industry. And I think smaller RVs are still going strong. And I think a lot of that is based on what we already said, like the interest rates, fuel prices. Less is more in this environment, I guess, for right now. That may change in the future, but right now it's still the big thing. Like I said, Julie and I are still looking for a small Class C that we can get instead of having our 30-foot fifth wheel. We still want to get smaller.
Yeah, we're in our 28-foot Class A right now and shopping also. We've been shopping, I feel like, for a while for our RV. We don't think we're going to go any bigger than 28 feet. If anything, I said this to Serena, I was like, if we would drop another foot, and I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but if we would go down to 27 foot and then tow our Jeep, we would actually have an easier time fitting in the Flying J's and the Loves parking spaces. Sabrina usually has to step outside to make sure that I'm not too far out in the front or the back. Same thing with Cracker Barrels. Like, we are usually just inches a little too big. And surprisingly, like, if we were drop to like a 27-foot Class C, then we would fit much easier in a lot of these urban camping situations. I know foot doesn't sound like a lot, but it would be enough for us to make a difference. So I don't think we'll go any bigger. We sometimes tease the idea of going bigger, but then I say to Sabrina, that's nice when you're parked and camp, but we move so much that I think there's more advantages of being smaller because we just are on the go so much. The smaller you are, the easier it is to move. The bigger you are, the more comfortable you are when you're parked. So it just depends on what are you doing more of? Are you parking more, or are you moving more?
And then, like you mentioned, Kenny, that you see at the shows that you go to is people are very interested in power systems now
Mhm.
and are interested in lithium. How much battery power do they have? And we have some episodes coming up where some RVs are coming with 5 kilowatts of power. That's incredible to be standard.
Standard. Yeah.
Yeah. And then more solar. You're seeing more and more RVs with solar already on, plus add-on capability. And so we are becoming, I think the industry is becoming more and more in favor of that off-grid capability.
Yeah. And towing. Towing, at least at the Overland Expos, everybody wants to know tow capacity. Everybody seems to want to tow something, whether that be a small travel trailer or their vehicle or their boat. Man, boats are really popular right now too. I seem to get more people towing boats than ever before right now. But everybody wants to be able to tow something. I think the towable department is still dominating the industry. Like, you go to an Overland Expo, and there are a lot of like off grid towing trailers. But you go to a Hershey show, and I feel like they are like towables is everywhere at a Hershey show.
Everywhere.
Just,
Yeah.
I mean, they're just
Same in
overrunning.
Tampa.
Is it the
Yeah.
same in Tampa too? Yeah, they're
Hmm.
so popular having that towability. But I know people that are buying motorhomes. Actually, Peter and Kathy Holcomb did this. They were towing a small travel trailer behind their motorhome because the daughter was staying in the travel trailer. I know that's not common, but everybody seems to want to be able to tow something. I did the SEMA show, and every single person asked me, what if you, Navion, could tow? Because they wanted to tow a car enclosed, like their show car enclosed in a trailer. Towing is like, I don't know, just all of us, maybe not all of a sudden, but it seems like I'm getting asked more and more about towing capacity and about our towables. We typically, Winnebago, I should say, typically doesn't bring towables, but everybody at every show asks about our towables. I think it's as popular as ever. If anything, I think it's even more popular. I guess generally towables are cheaper to get into as long as you already own the truck. If you got to factor in that you're purchasing a truck, now it's not any cheaper. Trucks are really expensive right now.
Trucks are expensive, yeah. You
Yeah.
know, speaking of boats, Kenny, but right before we recorded this, I had the dogs out for a walk, and when we were driving back, I saw Class C towing a decent size boat, and I
Hmm.
think that was the first time I'd seen it.
I see Class A diesel pushers towing boats often. I probably see a couple Class Cs too, but not a lot. I definitely hear it more at the show than actually see it being done. And I guess whenever I think of a boat, Sean, I'm thinking of a big boat, but I guess people are probably just talking about little fishing boats. They're probably not even talking about like, I'm probably not picturing the right boat when they're telling me that they want to tow a boat. I bet you it's just like maybe a little 3-seater fishing boat that probably weighs,
Oh, yeah, yeah,
some that you see at Cabela's or a Ben's
yeah.
Pro Shop. That's probably what they're talking about. But I always picture massive boats when they tell me that they want to tow a boat. And that was the RVIA that reported on the towables remain dominant for as far as the sales go. Well, you could easily look this up too. Is Class A motorhomes, like the big Class A motorhomes, even my size Class A motor, 28 footers. They don't sell. They don't sell like they used to.
Yeah.
The younger, this newer, younger generation of RVers don't really want something that big. Because even my RV at 28 feet, it's still like 10 feet wide and it's over 12 feet tall. It's still a very big vehicle. And if you're new to RVing, it can be intimidating compared to getting into like a Class C that's a foot narrower and at least a foot lower to the ground. So, I definitely see why the shift. And for whatever reason, Class A motorhomes, like the big diesel, but they don't have any cool factor to them. you know, Compared to all these other smaller rigs, they all look more aerodynamic or they look more off-road capable. But I always have said the Class A's, the small Class A's, I feel like you always get like the best bang for your buck. You get large water capacities, cargo capacities. I'm not going around of why Class A's are so nice. That's partially because I listened to Stress Less Camping the other day, and
Oh, yeah.
and Tony said that he doesn't like Class A's. So I'm now on our podcast defending Class A's. So coming just down to our final thoughts here for the show, I think there's going to be more smaller rigs coming out onto the market from manufacturers. I think this younger buyers are just they have a different mindset of what RVing is. I don't think we're going to see RVs with a simple program or function make a comeback. I think if anything, they're probably going to get more technical, more complicated, but supposedly easier to use. I don't know. I just feel like I said, my nieces, my nephews that are 20 years old, they've grown up with a phone in their hand basically. And they're so used to just swipe and push and click and monitor and see like all the information is always in the palm of their hand. And I feel like that's the market that, all these manufacturers are going to kind of go after.
You know, I was on that trip, Kenny, and this guy was talking about technology and like everywhere you go, even McDonald's now, I guess, has touchscreen ordering. And he was talking about his grandchild. I forget how old they were, but he said one, they had never been in a bank because you can do it all online.
Yeah.
And two, they never went up to a counter to order anything anymore. They either ordered it online ahead of time to pick up, or they used the touchscreen at the place to order what they wanted.
Yeah. Well, now you got Uber Eats too, where it's just you order through
Yeah,
the app and it gets delivered to you. You don't even have to go
yeah.
to the place at all. Wow. You know what?
So, yeah, I can see that them being way more comfortable,
Mhm.
prefer the technology over like talking to people or simpler buttons.
Yeah, I think, we're becoming the dinosaur, Sean. We'll
Yeah.
be phased. We'll be phased out. I think manufacturers will probably start listening to the younger generation, probably more than us anyway. People in their 50s and older, but we'll see. I mean, We'll see. It's funny that you mentioned that about the McDonald's. I went into a Burger King the other day, Sean, to get a Mandalorian. Mandalorian's movie's out right now. I wanted one of their cups. It's been a long time since I've been into a fast food restaurant, and I walked in, and there's nobody at the front counter. It was just these screens. I had no idea what to do, and I walked up to the counter. I touched the screen. It says, you can place your order, but I had questions because I wanted the special Mandalorian cup. And I said, "Do I have to use one of these screens out here?" And the girl behind the counter said, "No, you can place your order with me. We can still take an order from the counter." I was like, "Oh my goodness, thank you," because I don't know what to do. I felt so old. Yeah, you walk in and it's got all these stations, I'll call them, with like two screens on each station, and there's just people up there and they're just tapping away on the screen and ordering their food. Nobody's going to the counter at all.
Wow.
So I just walked up to the counter and I was like, "Can I ask you a question?" So that's who they're marketing towards now, I think.
So a few questions for everyone listening. First, would you buy a new or used RV right now, given what the current economic environment is like? Second, are campgrounds getting too expensive in your mind? Do you think campgrounds need to become more reasonable? And do you want every campground to be a resort, I
Yeah,
guess? Or are you happy with sort of the mom and pop type campgrounds? I guess for us, it really depends on what our trip is that we're doing. So,
yeah.
and then what RV trend are you tired of? Are you tired of the smaller RVs, the adventure vehicles taking over? Are you tired of the tech? Do you think it's becoming too complicated? And do you prioritize the luxury, like Kenny was saying, the big diesel pushers, or do you prioritize capability of being able to get in wherever you want to get in and go off road if you want to go off road, or stay out of campgrounds if you want to do that? So let us know, answer those questions, and just, type a comment in whatever platform you're listening to us on. And we love reading the comments, and we'll get back to you as well. We try to reply to most all of the comments unless they're spam or something. So thanks everybody for listening, and we'll be back with some great new episodes. We have them done. We have them recorded. We're just waiting to be able to release them. So hopefully the next month and a half or so of episodes are all interviews with some cool people and some cool products. Safe travels, everybody.